One of the things that people don't think about very often with icons is the prophetic dimension. So in the scriptures, prophecy is not just approved fortune telling. Prophecy primarily within the scriptures is seeing and telling God's perspective on a matter. How does God see something? A great example of that from the Gospels. In John's Gospel, where Christ is having this discourse and he says, "Father, glorify me with the glory I had with you before the creation of the world." And it says, a voice came from the heavens saying, "I have glorified it and I will glorify it again." What's interesting about that, clearly the author of the Gospel heard the voice and knew what it said. But it said some thought that it merely thundered. Others thought that an angel had spoken to him. And the Gospel writer knew what the voice said. So you have those who have that prophetic gift where he can say, here's what God is saying here. Here is where God is pointing. Here is God's perspective on the matter. Like with Joseph, the patriarch in the Old Testament. When his brothers come and find him in Egypt and he's the second most powerful man in the land, they had sold him into slavery. He's not upset. He says, "What you did to me, you intended for evil, but God meant it for good." He's able to see God's perspective in the matter. That's what makes something prophetic. So what does that have to do with icons? An icon is the perspective of the kingdom of heaven. It's not just Saint Zacchaeus. It's what did Christ do in the life of Zacchaeus? How did the kingdom of heaven break through in this life in such a way that we commemorate it and imitate it, and it's part of that great cloud of witnesses? The perspective of various scriptural events. Again, in the icon, you see it transformed. If you look at the icon for the presentation of our Lord in the temple, it's depicted as outdoors. But we know that it took place inside the temple. Why is it outdoors? Because there's nothing hidden which will not be made known in the kingdom. Everything is laid bare. We're seeing things from the perspective of the kingdom. We see the saints in the icons. You're not seeing what that guy did. You're seeing who was Christ in this man or in this woman. The icon for the nativity, for the birth of Christ. And you've got all these things collapsed in on themselves. You've got the angels speaking to the shepherds, the magi visiting, the birth of Christ in the cave. Even Joseph down here wondering, what's happening? How is this possible? It's all put together in the same image. Well, clearly, all those things didn't happen at the same moment. The point of an icon is not to give you a neat visual historical rendering of events. It's there to show you, in the light of the kingdom, how does God see these events and the connection between these events. So you're seeing the continuity between all of these moments that, yes, in a linear timeline in the gospel, they're happening at different points in time. But you're seeing them from God's view as one cohesive whole within the gospel, making the kingdom of heaven present. Icons serve a prophetic function. You are showing, what did Christ do here? How does God see this event, this life, this person? And his perspective, not ours. And that's why we don't paint them the way we feel like painting them. We make icons according to what has been handed down to us from, the very days of the apostles. Saint Luke, the evangelist, is credited as having been the first iconographer.